On April 6, 2020, a new app appeared on the App Store. It was called Quibi. It was short for Quick Bites. It promised to revolutionize the way we watch television. It had everything going for it. It had the most famous founder in Hollywood. It had the most powerful CEO in Silicon Valley. It had $1.75 billion in cash. That is billion with a B. They hired Steven Spielberg. They hired Jennifer Lopez. They hired The Rock. They bought Super Bowl commercials. Investors were fighting to give them money. Disney put in money. Alibaba put in money. Goldman Sachs put in money. They were calling it the Netflix for the smartphone generation. But just 6 months later, it was gone. On October 21, 2020, Quibi announced it was shutting down. It is officially the fastest failure in the history of Silicon Valley. They burned through nearly $1 billion in 199 days. That is roughly $5 million a day. Every single day? For 6 months. How did the smartest people in the room get it so wrong? They had the money. They had the talent. They had the content. But they forgot one thing. Nobody asked for this. They tried to sell water to people who were already drowning in free champagne. This is the story of hubris. This is the story of how Hollywood and Silicon Valley combined their egos to build a monument to themselves, and the internet laughed them out of the room. To understand Quibi, you have to understand the man who dreamt it up. Jeffrey Katzenberg. He is a legend. He ran Disney Studios in the 1990s. He is the man who greenlit The Lion King. He greenlit Beauty and the Beast. Then he left Disney and co-founded DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg. He gave the world Shrek. For 30 years, Jeffrey Katzenberg had a golden gut. He knew what audiences wanted before they knew it themselves. He was used to being right. In 2018, he had a vision. He looked at young people on their phones. He saw them watching YouTube. He saw them scrolling through Instagram, and he thought this is garbage. He believed that young people were watching low-quality video because they had no choice. He thought if he gave them Hollywood-quality video, but chopped it into 10-minute chunks, they would pay for it. He called it a white space. He believed there was a gap between a 2-hour movie and a 2-minute YouTube clip. He wanted to fill that gap. He was so convinced that he started pitching investors. And because he was Jeffrey Katzenberg, everyone listened. He walked into meetings and said, "I am going to change media forever." But he knew he could not do it alone. He was a Hollywood guy. He needed a tech guy. Or in this case, a tech queen. Meg Whitman is royalty in the business world. She took eBay from a tiny auction site to an $8 billion giant. She ran Hewlett-Packard. She even ran for governor of California. She was disciplined. She was respected. She was the adult in the room. Katzenberg recruited her to be the CEO of Quibi. It seemed like the perfect marriage. He would handle the movies. She would handle the app. Together they went on a road show to raise money. And they raised a mountain of it. They raised $1 billion before they even had a name for the company. Then they raised another $750 million just before launch. It was unprecedented. Usually startups raise a few $1,000,000, build a product, see if people like it, and then raise more. Quibi did the opposite. They raised all the money first based purely on the reputation of the founders. They hired top talent. They moved into a fancy office in Hollywood. They paid executives millions of dollars. They were building a Ferrari in a garage without asking if anyone wanted to drive. Every great startup needs a technological breakthrough. Google had the search algorithm. Uber had the location tracking. Quibi had Turnstile. This was their secret weapon. Jeffrey Katzenberg was obsessed with it. Here is how it worked. You could hold your phone vertically and see a close-up of the actor. Then you could rotate your phone horizontally and see the wide shot of the scene. The video and audio would sync perfectly. It was technically impressive. It required 2 separate video streams playing at the same time. They patented it. They thought this was the killer feature. They thought people would be so amazed by rotating their phones that they would pay $5 a month for the privilege. But they missed the point. Nobody holds their phone with 2 hands and rotates it back and forth while watching a show. It is annoying. People hold their phone with one hand while eating a sandwich or holding a strap on the subway. Turnstile was a solution looking for a problem. But Katzenberg was so confident in it that he sued a competitor called Echo before Quibi even launched. He claimed he invented mobile video. It was pure ego. He believed the format was the product. But as we would soon find out, the format does not matter if the show is bad. Content is king. That is the rule of Hollywood. So Quibi spent $1 billion on content. They paid the highest rates in the industry. They paid $100,000 per minute of video. That is $6 million for an hour of television. That is Game of Thrones level money. They hired the biggest stars. Christoph Waltz, Liam Hemsworth, Chrissy Teigen, Idris Elba. They thought that if they put famous faces on the screen, people would sign up. But the shows were weird. Because the episodes had to be exactly 10 minutes long, the writing felt forced. Every episode had to end on a cliffhanger. It felt like a long movie chopped up with a meat cleaver. And then there were the concepts. One show was called The Golden Arm. It was about a woman with a solid gold arm who gets addicted to how much attention it brings her. In the climax of the show, she literally rips her own arm off. It was meant to be a serious drama, but the internet treated it like a comedy. Clips of the show went viral on Twitter. People were mocking it. They were saying, "Look at this trash that cost $6 million. Another show was about a woman who falls in love with her sex doll. It was bizarre. It felt like a parody of Hollywood. But Quibi was dead serious. They submitted these shows for Emmys before the app even launched. They were planning the victory parade before the game started. Then came the bad luck, the COVID-19 pandemic. Quibi launched on April 6, 2020. The entire world was in lockdown. Jeffrey Katzenberg later blamed the failure entirely on the pandemic. He said, "I attribute everything that has gone wrong to coronavirus." His logic was this: Quibi was designed for the in-between moments, waiting for the bus, waiting for coffee, sitting on the subway. When the pandemic hit, nobody was waiting for the bus. Everyone was stuck at home. And when you are at home, you have a big 40K television. You do not want to watch a movie on your tiny phone screen. But this is where Quibi made a fatal error. They did not build a TV app. You could not cast Quibi to your television. You could not use AirPlay. The app literally blocked you from putting the video on a big screen. Why? Because of the turnstile technology. You cannot rotate your television, so the technology they spent millions developing actually prevented people from watching the shows. Users begged for a TV app. They went on Twitter and said, "Please let me watch this on my Chromecast." Quibi said no. It took them 2 months to fix this. By then, it was too late. The pandemic was not the problem. Netflix grew during the pandemic. Disney Plus grew during the pandemic. TikTok exploded during the pandemic. People were hungry for content. They just were not hungry for Quibi. The real villain in the Quibi story is not COVID, it is TikTok. Jeffrey Katzenberg did not understand the internet. He thought he was competing with Netflix. He was wrong. He was competing with TikTok and YouTube, and he was charging money for something that they offered for free. Quibi costs $4.99 a month with ads, or $7.99 a month without ads. Think about that value proposition. For $5, you got a few hours of mediocre shows starring celebrities acting weird. For $0 on TikTok, you got an infinite stream of the funniest, most creative content on earth, tailored exactly to your taste by an algorithm. Quibi was a walled garden. They did not let you take screenshots. They did not let you share clips. They did not let you share the content on social media. This was a death sentence. In 2020, if it is not on social media, it does not exist. They killed their own viral marketing. Meanwhile, Tiger King was on Netflix. Everyone was talking about Tiger King. Why? Because people made memes about it. They shared clips. Quibi tried to control the conversation and ended up silencing it. The launch numbers were a disaster. On the first day, they got 300,000 downloads. That sounds okay. But Disney Plus got 10 million on its first day. After the first week, the app fell out of the top 50. By June, it was out of the top 100. They were spending millions on advertising, but nobody was staying. The conversion rate was horrific. After the free trial ended, 92% of users canceled. 92%. That means almost nobody thought it was worth paying for. Katzenberg panicked. He told his executives to burn the furniture. They slashed marketing budgets. They tried to change the programming. They finally built the TV app, but the smell of death was already in the air. Rumors started circulating that they were trying to sell the company. They pitched it to Apple. Apple said no. They pitched it to Facebook. Facebook said no. They pitched it to NBC Universal. NBC said no. Nobody wanted the technology. Nobody wanted the content. The brand was toxic. On October 21, 2020, Meg Whitman and Jeffrey Katzenberg got on a Zoom call with their employees. They were crying. They told the staff it was over. They were shutting down the company immediately. But there is one twist in this story that is actually positive. Usually when a startup fails, they spend every last dollar trying to survive. They run the bank account to zero and leave the investors with nothing. Quibi did something different. They still had $350 million in the bank. They decided to give it back. They returned the remaining cash to the investors. It was an admission of defeat, but it was an honorable one. Jeffrey Katzenberg said, "We have tried everything. There is no path forward." Rather than burning the rest of the money, they cut their losses. They sold the content library to Roku for less than $100 million. Think about that. They spent $1 billion making the shows and sold them for $100 million. Roku got the bargain of the century. They rebranded the shows as Roku Originals. And ironically, more people watched them on Roku for free than ever watched them on Quibi. Today, the Quibi headquarters in Hollywood is empty. The app is gone from the store. The name has become a punchline. If you make a bad bet in Silicon Valley, they call it pulling a Quibi. Jeffrey Katzenberg went back to investing. Meg Whitman became the U.S. ambassador to Kenya. They both survived, but their reputations were permanently scarred. They proved that you cannot buy cool, you cannot force a habit, and you cannot tell the internet what it wants. The fall of Quibi is the most expensive lesson in product market fit ever taught. Here are the 3 lessons from their collapse. Lesson 1: the problem must exist before the solution. Quibi created a solution turnstile and high-quality short video for a problem that nobody had. Nobody was complaining about YouTube. Nobody was saying, "I wish I had to pay $5 for 5-minute videos." Great businesses solve pain. Quibi tried to create pleasure but failed because the alternative was already better. Lesson 2: do not fight the free open internet. If your competitor is free, your product must be 10 times better. Quibi was not 10 times better than TikTok. In fact, for mobile consumption, it was worse. TikTok is fast, vertical, and social. Quibi was slow, horizontal, and antisocial. You cannot charge a toll on a road that has a free highway running right next to it. Lesson 3. Ego is a blinder. Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman were too successful. They had never really failed. This made them deaf. When young employees told them the content was cringe, they ignored them. When engineers told them the lack of sharing was a mistake, they ignored them. They believed their own resume. They thought that because they were geniuses in the 90s, they knew the future of the 20s. But the internet is the great equalizer. It does not care who you are. It only cares if your product is good. Quibi was a $1.75 billion bet that the past could control the future, and the future won in just 6 months.